You don't set sail without knowing where you want to go. Christopher Columbus, and I think, if I remember correctly, he set sail whether he was looking for America or not. But most of what I've always heard, if you don't set sail without knowing where you want to go. Well, life is kind of that way. Where do you want to go? The sooner you know where you want to go, the sooner you can deal with when the wind's in your face. You don't set sail without knowing where you want to go. Christopher Columbus, and I think, if I remember correctly, he set sail whether he was looking for America or not. But most of what I've always heard, if you don't set sail without knowing where you want to go. Well, life is kind of that way. Where do you want to go? The sooner you know where you want to go, the sooner you can deal with when the wind's in your face. Change is about creating habits and attitudes now for greater expectations. You don't change to make yourself worse. You're trying to change to improve yourself. You're trying to improve your mental ability to help you in your career, right? You're trying to improve your, whatever it may be. You're trying to make yourself look more attractive. You can find a spouse. You're trying to, are you making the necessary changes to get where you want to go? And, it just reflects in yourself.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Auto Grade Podcast. My name is Daniel Lugo. I'm your host. And today I have the pleasure of having here Dr. Len. I think it's going to be a wonderful conversation. I think all of you are going to like. So please, Dr. Len, can you please introduce yourself to the audience?
Hey, Daniel, thank you so much. I'm Dr. Len Lopez. For about the last 25, 30 years, I've been helping people learn how to eat right, train smart. And, during that time, I've had my ups and downs in life, like so many of us have over a long span. And, just about, making sure you get yourself back up when you get knocked down and try to stay up when you're up again and everything. And so, the last couple of years, kind of things have really changed. Instead of just treating people for health and fitness concerns, I was being interviewed for a fitness magazine on health and fitness. And about a year later, Authority magazine came back and said, "Hey, Doc, we really like that, the article we put together on health and fitness. We'd like to do another one on kind of body, mind, and spirit. Would you?" I don't know. It's kind of, for some people that might be iffy on that, but if it is, let us know. We'd love to get your thoughts on it. So, I thought about it and I said, I created this thing called 5 Steps about 25 years ago. I've used it for myself as a way to just kind of build myself up and everything, as far as feeding my body, my mind, and everything. And I shared it to them, and all it is just a simple way of tracking. I think a lot of people are tracking their physical activity with their watches, right? They're tracking how many steps they take in a day because they're more health conscious. So 5 steps a day is similar to that. And in less than 2 minutes, you can track how well you're feeding your body. How are you feeding your mind? How are you feeding your spirit? And like anything else, accountability can really help move you to where you want to be, because sometimes people, they'll come back and say, "Gosh, I had no idea I was feeding my body so much junky food. And maybe that's the reason why my physical health is where it's at." And then when we just kind of turn it a little bit and say, "Hey, I had no idea my self-talk, my internal dialogue, my subconscious talk when I sleep is just kind of up for grabs. And maybe if I kind of spin it another way, that maybe that could be, helpful." And so that's all 5 Steps is. It's a simple app you can download to help you track how well you're feeding body, how well you're feeding your mind, how well you're feeding your spirit.
I really like that. And before we started recording for this episode, I was talking about my eagerness to always seek something to improve myself, not only my body, but my brain, right? Spiritually as well. That's an important part that I think most of us disregard. But when it comes to it, that's the part that holds us in the darkest moments and the deepest moment. That's part of the reason I do this podcast, and I share every audience someone that brings in a different story, because one story is going to impact somebody out there. Right, and we try and change life. And I think what you're talking about, tracking everything in your life, well, not everything. I'm not gonna put everything out there, but doing our best to put our body, mind, and soul first is gonna be perfect. And my first question to you will be: you talk about how the choices we make either lead us to our proverbial land of milk and honey, or straight to a land of heartaches and headaches. For a listener who feels completely trapped in a gray area or a vicious cycle right now, how do they recognize that their choices are what they're keeping them from there?
No, that's a really great question, because a lot of people, and I kind of really discovered it with my patients that were coming in for health and fitness advice, right? But as they would come in after about the third or fourth visit, they just start sharing more about what's going on in their life. They became like a friend, and they would, in confidence, share with me some of their struggles they were having, whether it be in their career, in their marriage, and with their kid, with their elderly parents, yada yada yada. And what I've learned and I've seen through my evolution and all the reading that I've done is that as we get older, we always have choices. Do we know where we want to go in life, professionally, scholastically, romantically, spiritually? And a lot of people, they don't, and then they finally realize that the choices you make in life are going to lead you to whatever your proverbial land of milk and honey, whatever that pot of gold, whatever your goals and dreams are. Do you know where you want to go? Because if you don't know where you want to go, it's easy to get sidetracked, and you can find yourself weeks later, months later, years later going, how did I get here? And I'll say it this way, and now I have a job I didn't like, I have a mortgage, I have a spouse, I have kids, and I don't know how I really got here, because they really didn't know where they wanted to go. And especially for younger generation, the 20 to 30-year-old, they're starting to get on this I want to call it escalator, this ride of life. And then when I go talk, I would say, remember, every day, if you're like in your 20s, just graduated high school or college and everything, you have X number of choices that you're making each day on how you feed your body, how you feed your mind, how you feed your spirit. 5 years earlier, you didn't have as many choices. And 5 years from today, you're going to have possibly more things pulling at your time, and for when especially if like you're in college right now, in 5 years, you may have a job, you may have a career, you may have a spouse, you may have a child, you may have a mortgage, all pulling at you, financially, emotionally. And, sometimes, are you ready for it? Is that what you want it to be? And maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but sometimes people just get into these situations in life, and it's like, I thought it was going to be different. And so, to take it back to what 5 Steps is all about, it's just trying to help you think about where it is you want to go. And so, having goals in life is really important. You don't, I mean, as I always say, you don't need to have goals laid out everywhere along the way. But if you have a little bit of idea of where you want to go, and I think I wish our education system spent time teaching people, do you know where you want to go in life? And some people, maybe I don't know what the numbers are, 10% of the population at 18, they may know that they want to be a doctor, an attorney, a lawyer, a fireman, whatever it may be. But a lot of people don't know. They may be in college because, that's what the family thought that you need to do. And so, it's kind of sad when you hear people coming out of college and they've just paid a 4-year degree and they're struggling trying to find a job, and realize that, hey, I took a job that I could have got without having to go to college. I didn't need this degree to get this job that I'm doing. And so, where are you going? And if you know where you want to go, you can see where you want to go and you can make that journey. Unfortunately, there's so many distractions and I hate saying it this way because I depend on, I'm sure you do too, and many in your audience do, this thing we all carry in our pocket. It can be a major distraction for you, but it can be made for good as well. So, that's just kind of what life is all about, choices.
That's right. And I agree with you. It's when a doctor gives you a medical diagnosis, you don't expect to attack it 5 years on. You expect it to attack it now. It's easier to attack it now and improve and maybe get to remission, right? Hopefully, than leaving it to 5 years down the line that you don't know what everything around. So that I think that's perfect because, for me, I'm 22, right? And I think that's an important part, taking care of your body, your mind, and your soul, right? Because that part is going to get you to where you want to be. And if we leave that for 5 years down the line, we don't know how that 5 years is going to go down. And if that change now can help us make our futures brighter, I would prefer to do it now than to do it later.
Right. And here's one thing to you, what you're saying here, what I tell a lot of people is that, maybe you don't know where it is you want to be in 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years down the road. That's okay. I always say you can still ready the ship to sail. You can still make yourself stronger mentally, physically, spiritually as you start, making yourself bigger, better, bolder, right? It may help you finally fine tune what it is you want to do, because now you have some kind of direction for yourself. But yeah, you don't have to know, okay, where you want to be in 3 years. But if you kind of know, I want to be, I want to be A, B, and C, you can start, or I'm sorry, if you can just start feeding yourself the thoughts that, hey, I build that self-esteem, build that self-confidence, build yourself up to where maybe in a few weeks you may start having an idea of what I want. And again, being 22 and your audience, maybe there's still some listeners who are in school. If you don't imagine yourself making an A on that test, getting the top grade out there, getting one of the high grade, making, there's a good chance you may or may not make that happen. But if you can put that focus, and I say that because I grew up not as a good athlete, but as an athlete, and I've done a lot of stuff. I did a lot of sports medicine and sports training stuff. But it's like, hey, most of the athletes, they know that when they walk up to the plate, up to the free throw line, or somebody who walks up to the microphone, they have to feel that they're going to go out there and just kick butt with what they're doing. They don't walk up to the free throw line, up to the batter's box, up to the microphone, just like, oh, I hope they like me. And so I like to just turn that. And that's kind of the same way I think you need to look at life in itself. Where are you trying to go with your life? And unfortunately, a lot of this, we're taught math, science, and history and stuff like that. But are we taught that, hey, when you get out there, where do you want to go? Where do you want to be? And it's so easy to get distracted to where you never give any self-reflection on where it is you want to be. And I'm sure your parents might be telling you, hey, asking you, what do you want to do, where you want to go? But, who knows? That maybe it took them their fourth decade in life before they got to where they knew they were on track. All I can say is if you're a parent, you're hoping that your kids figure out where they want to go by the end of their second decade, the third decade of life. Unfortunately, as we've seen, there's a lot of people in their third, fourth, and fifth decade, and I can attest to that from people I've talked with, that they are still struggling with what they want to do in life.
And I think that's one of the things I would love for everybody to get out of this podcast is for them to find a purpose. But that's fine if you don't find it today, tomorrow, or 6 years down the line. What is important is for your body to be right, your mind to be right, and your soul to be right. Because when you find that purpose, you're really going to need your body to be fine. You're going to need your mind to be working at 100%, 110, right? And your soul to be strong, because it's going to take you a lot, because, having a purpose one day looks beautiful, wonders, right? Butterflies, rainbows. But sometimes, for example, a video doesn't go the way you wanted it to go, right? And you're like, oh my God, am I doing the right thing? And you start struggling. But that's when you need that spirituality and your mind to be strong for you to fight longer, because purpose doesn't go from overnight. It happens
Well,
over
kind of like
time.
what I was saying a minute ago, do you know where you want to go, right? You don't set sail without knowing where you want to go. Christopher Columbus, and I think, if I remember correctly, he set sail whether he was looking for America or not. But most of what I've always heard, if you're in, you don't set sail without knowing where you want to go. Well, life is kind of that way. Where do you want to go? The sooner you know where you want to go, the sooner you can deal with when the wind's in your face, right? And then if you know where you want to go, you'll trudge through the difficult time, the challenges that come your way, because soon enough, the wind's going to change, and soon enough, that wind may be at your back. And if you know where you want to go mentally, physically, spiritually, and now you got the wind turned and now it's at your backside, you can really make those great strides. And so I always say we've always heard the term, no, that was lucky. That was lucky. And I think, luck is it's when preparation and opportunity intersect. Are you ready? Are you strong physically, mentally, spiritually? So when you just happen to be walking down the street, bump into somebody with your girlfriend or boyfriend, and you meet somebody, and all of a sudden you just happen to meet the new president here. You don't know, but the way you presented yourself, you showed that you were the person that, hey, I like this cat. You just never know. It's again when preparation and opportunity intersect. And I always like to say, If you don't know where you want to go, that's okay for now. It'll come. Just work on yourself, build your self-confidence, build your self-esteem. And that's kind of what 5 steps is all about, just helping you start building that self-confidence internally within yourself.
I think that's great. And before we go on the podcast, one of the things that we talk about in this podcast is when we go through struggles and talking about challenges and purpose. What was that moment in your life when you felt like this is my purpose? This is what I went through, and this led me to becoming who I am today.
Well, guys, I can go. I've had my ups and downs, guys. In my 20s, me and my brother, we had a business. We lost the business, lost my house, and became an actor. Did that full time. Traveled the country, New York, not New York, Houston, Dallas, Chicago, Los Angeles. Never was any good, But I was doing that for a few years. And I will say one thing. I thought about getting back into the health services because I did start my college career that way. Although I changed after that, I think my second semester, because I really didn't dig the sciences, because for me, I felt like all I'm doing is memorizing all this biology, all this chemistry. I didn't see the application for it. And when I moved into the business world as far as the studying, it was like, okay, if you write your message this way, or the way you put it, left to right, top to bottom, it has some influence on everything. And that just had me thinking. So that kind of attracted me. But I guess one of the things that really opened me up, I think I was living in LA. I was working as an actor out there, but I also had like 18 other part-time jobs as well. And I just happened to meet a gentleman I had no idea who he was. I was a bellman at one of the big hotels out there, and he was there with the big convention. And as we just started chatting, he just took we just hit it off. And then he invited, because I had it. Wow, maybe this is just per chance, because I've had this idea. I built molds and models and everything. So I called him up a couple of months later, flew out to his house in Las Vegas, right, to go, share this with this guy. I go, here's somebody. He made, who knows? I get up to his house, and this was back in the 90s, right? So where you had to use a map, there was no cell phones to kind of figure out where you're going and everything. I get to this house, it's like, my God, who is this guy? I mean, it was like Wayne Newton. It was a ginormous house and everything. Long story short, he was just, one of the major players in the chiropractic industry. And he was the one that really would influence me, because at that time, I was doing volunteer work at UCLA Hospital to try to possibly get into physical therapy school. And he said, Len, I think you have more purpose in your life. I think, you need to be able to diagnose and this, that, and the other. And so you ought to think about chiropractic. And I thought, when I had broken my back 10 years earlier playing ball, and the only one that really helped me with my injury were the chiropractors that I saw and everything. And so I thought about it. And so that just kind of got me into this profession. And through that, because all the athletic stuff I was doing, it got me into nutrition, got me into just understanding how the body functions, into the natural medicines. And lo and behold, that's what I've been doing the last 25 plus years.
Wow, that's a great story. And how incredible we can find our purpose by, out of nowhere, you meet this person, right? You tell them an idea. They tell you, hey, make it work. And when it works, tell me and just call me. And you went there, and that became your life, right? And when you were speaking, I thought to myself, because me too, I'm 22, right? I know what my definite purpose is. Right, I know helping people is part of it, but how? That's not defined yet. So, it's crazy. So there's another question I have for you. For over 25 years, you help people learn to eat right and train smart. But you realize that people often only track their physical bodies while letting their mind and spirit starve, like we have talked before. Why do you think so many high achievers mask an empty internal state with external fitness or success?
I think it's kind of what you feed yourself. If you feed yourself just cookies and ice cream and candy like that, what kind of physical health can you achieve, right? Well, I guess this is why I think reading is important. Okay. Watching videos is great. Also, there can be some stuff that can be very educational with it as well. But unfortunately, for a lot of people, they can really be a distraction just seeing so many other of the stupid cat videos out around. I should say dog videos. I like dogs more, but that's what I've had sometimes. But
Me too.
it's just, time is a commodity. And how are you using your time? When you come home from school, when you come home from work, do you take time to improve your physical health? Or do you sit on the couch, you grab the remote control and put up, 18 episodes of a TV show you're going to start watching, you're going to binge watch for the next 3 nights? What did you do for those 3 hours each night and everything versus anything you could have done that's positive for yourself? And so life is all about choices and everything. And all I'm trying to help people do with 5 steps is say, hey, do you even know? And I say, I created 5 steps just for myself because when I was in my mid 20s and everything, going through life and everything, I was trying to. I wanted to be. I wanted to be in better shape. I wanted to be real fit. I wanted to be a better dancer. I wanted to play the guitar. So some of these things I wanted to be. I wanted to make sure I read, X number a day. And so I used to make notations on my calendar. The big wall calendar, right? And I would make notations on there, and at the end of the month, I could see how. Oh, hey, that was a good week. I did my dancing for 3 times. Oh, I did my stretching 3 times this week. Ooh, I only went to the pistol range once this week. How much, whatever it might have been, I was doing, and then I realized. That's kind of how 5 steps evolve. I can quickly see, hey, what am I doing? I can kind of like your accountant, hey, let me show you what you're doing, what you're not doing, because you may think you're doing great, but according to the books here, you're not doing as what you think you should be doing. And maybe that's not why, or maybe that's why you're not where you want to be.
I like that. And in your work, you emphasize that change is not a 6 letter word. Why are humans so naturally paralyzed by the discomfort of changing their habits, even when their current routine is causing them pain?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's if you know where you want to go, and that's the problem that a lot of people don't know where they want to go. And I always say the acronym for change is create. Change is about creating habits and attitudes now for greater expectations. You don't change to make yourself worse, but it does happen. You're trying to change to improve yourself. You're trying to get in better shape. You're trying to improve your mental ability to help you in your career, right? You're trying to improve your whatever it may be. You're trying to make yourself look more attractive. You can find a spouse, right? Whatever it may be, you're trying to, are you making the necessary changes to get where you want to go? And it just reflects in yourself, and people can. I think people can notice that.
I like that because when you are trying to change, it doesn't, well, one part of the thing about change is that you don't have to change completely. You can start small and then keep increasing and to
Well,
get to where you want to be.
yeah, that's what 5 steps is all about. Each week, each day, you can just kind of track to see, hey, am I taking more steps today, this week, than I did last week? And so there's something about visually seeing the number of footsteps you took this week. I only took 12 steps this week. Hey, next week, hey, I took 26 steps this week to move myself forward. And so that's what it's all about. As I always say, change is not a 4-letter word, but change takes, a conscious decision. And everybody's going to have different motivation. How come this time I'm going to finally start exercising? What's it going to take? Some people it takes. I've tried a diet for the last 10 years and I can't stick with the diet. I've tried exercise and I can't. What is it going to take? There's always a motivating factor. And one of the steps I talk about in 5 steps is the sleep step. Do you fall asleep thinking about where you want to go? Do you feed your subconscious mind of where you want to be, or do you just fall asleep with the remote control in your hand, with your cell phone in your hand, just and you're out? What are you feeding your subconscious mind? We know you shouldn't eat junky food before going to bed, right? Well, how many of us fall asleep at night just with the remote control, your cell phone in your hand, and boom, you're out? What do you think you're feeding your subconscious mind for those next 7, 8 hours? And so, once you start noticing that, hey, that makes sense. Maybe I need to start thinking about, ooh, I want to have that job. I want to have that corner office. I want to do good on this test. I want to achieve A, B, or C. Once you have some kind of an idea, purpose, and then you can sit and sleep and dream about it. That's again, when the first step is the sleep step. Do you sleep and dream about your tomorrow? Do you know where you want to go? You don't have to dream about, I mean, you could dream about something 3 days down the road, 3 weeks, 3 years down the road. If you're a student, you can see yourself, getting that test back with an A on it, right? You can see yourself, making the first chair. You can see yourself getting that diploma, getting that scholarship, whatever it may be. But if you have something to focus on, it helps drive your energy to get to where you're trying to go.
So, would you say that for a person going to a personal storm, they should focus on sleeping first out of the 5 steps?
Well, no, well, that's just one of the steps because, as we said a minute ago, we talked about feeding the body, right? Good carbohydrates, bad foods, right? Well, you have to think, well, if you go to bed at nighttime with worry, fear, and anxiety, what kind of night's rest are you getting, right? What is your subconscious mind focusing on for those 7 to 8 hours you're asleep? But if you fall asleep dreaming about where you want to go tomorrow, 3 days, 3 months, 3 years down the road, if you see yourself falling asleep saying, "Hey, I want to go take a cruise in 5 months. I want to have enough money to go take a cruise. I want to see that new car. I want to see myself." If you can start visualizing that in your mind, planting that seed, giving your mind some direction of why you're plodding through the drudgery to get there, it makes it easier for yourself. And so, as I say, we can go back to biblical times. We've always known, man is as a man thinketh. What kind of thoughts are you feeding yourself throughout the day consciously? And what kind of thoughts are you feeding yourself subconsciously when you sleep? If you can just start adding a little bit here, a little bit here, a little, researchers say that we process about 50,000 thoughts a day. Right. And when I first heard that, I thought, are you 50,000 thoughts? And I'm going to take their word for it because I did my research trying to figure that out. And that's what a lot of them were saying. But the thing that was really fascinating to me, Daniel, they're saying of the 50,000 thoughts that you have, about 80% of the thoughts you have today are thoughts you had yesterday. I'm going, well, yeah, we're doing reruns then, right? But the thing that was even more fascinating, they said that of the thoughts you had from yesterday, 90% of the thoughts you're going to be thinking about are slanted negatively. And I'm scratching my head going, but it does make sense when I look at my life and everything. And then when I started thinking about it further, in this industry that we're in today, right? You might get 10 nice likes or nice comments on your blog or whatever, but it's that one person that says you stink, right? That's the one you're going to focus on. You're going to keep you just kind of holding on to that thing. So if we can just start learning how to, at nighttime, ready to ship to sail, said, hey, let me take a minute here. Let me take another minute here. Let me take another minute here just to think about where I want to go. And as I said earlier, you don't walk up to the plate, up to the microphone, up to the free throw line, onto the mat, thinking you're going to get beat, right? You want to walk in there thinking you're going to be the conqueror, right? You want to be the winner. And you can call me not egotistical, but you're there for a reason, right? And so that's how life is going to be. Where do you want to go? Can you see yourself achieving that? I mean, you don't see any of the celebrities out there thinking, oh, nobody's going to applaud when I go up there and start singing, right, or dancing or whatever it may be. You have to see yourself seeing the cheers and seeing the applause, seeing yourself hit the home run. And so what I always try to tell patients stuff like, hey, every morning, we may not be professional athletes or professional entertainers, or we have that opportunity to have, some grandiose activity later in the day. But every day when you walk out the door to meet your day's challenges and everything, do you walk out there knowing where you want to go, what you want to do, where do you want to achieve yourself? Do you give yourself any self-talk that's going to pat you on the back, that's going to help pump you up? Yeah, having a personal coach is great, but you can only get them maybe once every other day. Self-talk may feel awkward at first, but people eat by themselves, they travel, they vacation, they sleep by themselves, they shop by themselves. So self-talk may feel a little bit awkward, but that internal just dialogue for 30 seconds here, a minute here, just telling you, I can do good. I feel great. I'm a winner. Whatever phraseology, that kind might just pick you up a little bit. And if you think about what we said a minute ago, 80% of our thoughts are slanted negatively. We don't need to go from 80-20 to 20-80, but if we can go from like 75 to 25, if you follow where I'm talking about, just that little bit of shift of those grains of sand, that may start making the momentum move a little bit. You never know what it's going to take. And I always think of my mother when she said, those drops on the carpet there, it's making a stain. Oh, mom, it's just a drop. Well, then next thing you know, it's 3 drops, then it's 15 drops, then it's 20 drops, and it makes a big old stain. And then it's my rear end for that. So, it's just about taking little steps to get you where you want to go.
I like that. So, what would you say to a person that wants to get started on the 5 steps today? If they want to get started on one, which one would you say is the most important for them to get started on?
Well, it's not about which one's important, in my opinion, Daniel. It's how are you feeding your body? How are you feeding your mind? How are you feeding your spirit? I think those are 3 different axes, the 3 different legs that kind of hold us up. And so I think people are familiar with, tracking their steps. They've heard about it. A lot of people in your audience, I'm sure they have to watch so they can track how many steps they do. And I try to make that transition for them, saying, okay, but what if you're not a walker? What if you like lifting weights, boxing, yoga, pickleball? How are you tracking that? What are you doing for your physical body? Here, all you do is just the word steps is just an acronym for sleep, think, eat, physical, and spirit. And if you did something physical today, you went and played pickleball, you went and lifted weights, you ran, jogged, whatever, maybe just walking to the grocery store could be enough physical exercise for you today. You shade in the pee, and let's say you ate better today. And so many of they say, doc, I was on a diet and everything, but I was good for like a week, 10 days. I was really good, doc. Then I blew it that day, and I've been off the wagon for the last 4 months. All we're trying to do, did you eat good today? And this is something I took with my patient, said, listen, Mrs. Johnson, over the next 7 days, you're going to have an opportunity to take 21 steps towards your goal of better health, meaning 21, 3 meals a day, 7 days a week, 21, right? And so they would think, I was just trying to paint a picture in their mind. Okay, that makes sense. Are you going to have I'd like you to have maybe 17 or 18 good meals throughout the week and everything. You have your 3 or 4 cruddy meals, but don't just, have that cruddy meal and then another cruddy meal. Well, I blew my diet. It has to be perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect. If you have a good meal, a good breakfast, a decent breakfast, you have a decent lunch, and then you go out with your friends that evening and you're celebrating, you're more this and sugary that and alcohol this and all that. Okay, 2 steps forward for the 2 good meals, 1 step backward. You're still moving in the right direction, in my opinion. So, home runs are great, but base hits will also help you win the ball game.
I really like that example. I really like baseball. That's my favorite sport. So I get it. Totally get it. One of your daily questions is, did I work my spiritual muscles? For listeners who might feel disconnected from their faith or spiritually burnt out during a hard season, what does exercising that muscle look like in a practical, everyday way?
A great question. And here's the way I try to frame it for everybody. Okay. We know if you're feeding your body is one thing, right? I always tell everybody working your spiritual muscles are to neglect your spirit is like skipping a meal. It leaves you empty. So I think we are body, mind, and spirit. But are you doing my walk has gone full circle. Being raised with spiritual beliefs, then in my college days and after, it was the furthest thing from my mind. Then, just kind of started reading more, started taking my time to read, like I was saying, and just started saying, okay. And so it brought me full circle. But one thing that really helped me back in the 80s and everything, when I say, okay, I'm going to grab the big book and I'm going to grab the Bible and I'm going to read it every night, right? 30 minutes. That's it. And I would always find a reason or excuse not to. And then it finally hit me one day. I'm driving my car, and this is for some of you who may not remember, there's these little buttons here called your AM and FM dial back then. And I think they're still there in your car today, but I would hit that AM button and, there might be a pastor in there talking. There might be some music out there. And it just helped me reflect on something that I was just completely leave out of my day because I didn't do it first thing in the morning or right before I went to bed that night because I was just too tired. And so there was just another way to work my spiritual muscles. As a strength coach and everything, I would say, yeah, lifting weights is a great way, but that's not the only way to get physically fit, right? Reading scripture is a great way to help yourself, but that may not be the only way for you right now because of your situation. Hey, maybe when I'm in my car, maybe I can grab my phone, I can listen to a podcast, I can just listen to some music, 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there. And maybe you do do a better job and start reading on a regular basis. Who knows? But you only have 1,440 minutes a day to use your time, and 5 or 10 minutes here, 15, 20 minutes here could be just moving you in that grain of salt that might be enough to move you in the right direction.
I really like that. I really love our conversation so far. And as a fellow baseball guy, you know all about dealing with slumps and high pressure situations. What is one piece of advice you can give to an athlete or young professional or somebody out here listening to the podcast who is currently in a slump and trying to find their footing?
Okay. This is just for you. And I shared this before. And, we're baseball guys, right? And I always say, imagine it's the ninth inning, it's there's 2 outs and you're down by a run and there's a run on third base. Who's up next to bat? Not me. I made the last out in the 8th inning, right? But whoever comes up to bat the next time, what are you going to tell them? What are you going to feed them to help them? Are you going to say, oh no, God, that's little Johnny. He's terrible. That we're not going to win this. No, you're going to try to feed him words of, hey, you can do it, man. Just keep your eye on the ball, man. This is going to be great for you. You're going to be the hero. I mean, that's kind of what I think life is about. Every day is another game. Are you ready to take the challenges out there? And so 5 steps is just a way to help track. Are you doing the things that can help you mentally, physically, spiritually to move with that next step to get to that next base? You can come out ahead.
You never know when is your moment. Like in the last World Series, that probably the guy you last thought about hitting a home run, hit the home run to tie the game, right? And they ended up winning the World Series. So you never know when that will be your moment. So you're right. We have to keep trying. We have to keep moving forward. And if you know somebody out there that is struggling, keep reminding them that their moment has not arrived. And even though it has not arrived, it doesn't mean that it will never arrive. It's going to come.
Right.
They just have to keep trying.
Hey, I got to share this with you now because we're baseball guys. We're talking about the World Series and everything. So obviously, you watched this past World Series with the Dodgers and the Toronto and everything, right? And so it was Game 7. If you saw the post game interview after Game 7, A-Rod was interviewing A-Rod and Big Papi and who else was there? Jeter. They were all there interviewing, and they had Mookie Betts. I know I said it before. I kept on saying Mookie Wilkes, who was way back, another generation. But Mookie Betts was there. They were interviewing him because he threw out there was a ground ball hit to him. He picked it up, threw it to first base. Game over, right? Dodgers win. And A-Rod asked him, what were you thinking? And A-Rod goes, it was me. I'd probably be thinking, please don't hit it to me. And if you saw the interview, Mookie said, yeah, I'm thinking, no, yeah, don't hit it to me. And I think one of the other guys said, is that what you're thinking? He goes, no, really. I told myself, be nasty. Be nasty. That's what he uses to change his mental state. And I say that because I think we've all seen Mr. Miyagi, right? This is his thing, right? He puts those hands together. He's ready to get that healing power in his body. Mookie knows that, hey, when he goes onto that field, he has to be mentally saying, be nasty. That was his phraseology. Everybody's going to have something like that. I know Mark Fisher, one of the professional soccer players, his thing was also just when he makes a mistake, he claps his hand to say, okay, just let it go. Let me move on. And so that's what you have to find what it is that's going to move you. Maybe it's playing with a couple of quarters in your pocket. Who knows? Snapping your fingers, rubbing your belly. You're going to find something that's going to help anchor you some way to get that mental fear, worry to, let me get over here again real quick. And as I said, according to research, you don't need to move a ton of grains of salt over here to be on this road of victory, but just a little here and a little here tomorrow and a little here the next day. After a while, I mean, you don't build the Roman Empire in 1 week. Everything, it takes time. And so hopefully some of your viewers will take a chance and go check out the 5 Steps a Day app and see if it might be helpful for you in your efforts of trying to get where you want to go in life.
Talking about the 5 steps, and I really hope that everybody likes this episode. I really liked it so far, and I would love for them to know where they can find you, where they can grab the app, so they can follow the steps.
Yeah, you can just download it on. You can just download 5 steps a day. It's on Google. It's on Apple Tunes, and out there you can just pull it down. It's free to download. And every day you just kind of, as I said, you shade in the footsteps, kind of like shading in your rings on your phone, or you're tracking your steps. But we're just tracking, not just it's going to take you less than 2 minutes. But we're going to track, are you feeding your mind? Are you feeding your spirit as well as your body and everything? And so once you get all three of them running together, I think that'll help get you where will help. It might change the outlook for you. And so that's all 5 steps all about. There's nothing magical. It's all about, are you doing the things you need to be doing? If I want to get in better shape, maybe I need to start walking. If I want to get in better physical, maybe I need to quit eating, bowls of ice cream at nighttime. Whatever it is you're doing, can you start taking little steps? Maybe let me consciously start thinking about, what am I planting in my head before I go to bed at night and everything? Because as I always say, if you don't know where you want to be tomorrow, if you don't know where your land of milk and honey is, don't be surprised if all of a sudden you find yourself on the land of headaches and heartache.
I really like that. And thank you again for coming here over for the podcast, saying everything. I think you shared too much knowledge for everybody to have out there. And I'm sorry we went too deep into the baseball side. I really love baseball, and I could talk baseball all day long. But I really like the podcast. I think a lot of people will like it. So thank you, Dr. Len, for coming here and sharing your knowledge. Thank you for everybody for listening to this episode. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share with the people that you love so that we can keep spreading this message. And don't forget to download the app from Dr. Len so you can keep improving and changing in your daily life. May God bless you all. Take care.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.